The intersection of Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy and Carl Jung's psychology offers a profound framework for understanding the human psyche, morality, and self-transformation. Nietzsche's critique of traditional morality and his concept of the Übermensch resonate deeply with Jung's idea of the the repressed aspects of the psyche that must be integrated for individuation. This script explores how Nietzschean thought and Jungian psychology converge in their emphasis on confronting the darker aspects of the self, transcending imposed moral structures, and achieving psychological and existential liberation. Point 1. Nietzsche's critique of morality and its psychological relevance. Friedrich Nietzsche's critique of morality, particularly in On the Genealogy of Morality, challenges the foundations of traditional ethical systems. He distinguishes between master morality, which celebrates strength, nobility, and power, and slave morality, which arises from resentment, and promotes guilt, meekness, and self-denial. Nietzsche argues that traditional morality, rooted in slave morality, suppresses natural instincts and desires, creating a culture of repression and psychological fragmentation. Nietzsche's analysis of morality is not merely a philosophical exercise, but a psychological one. He contends that slave morality originates from the weak and oppressed, who, unable to assert their power directly, invert the values of the strong. What the powerful call good, strength, pride, and nobility, the weak label as evil, while their own traits of meekness, humility, and obedience are glorified as good. This inversion, Nietzsche argues, is a form of psychological warfare, allowing the weak to gain a sense of superiority over the strong. However, this moral framework comes at a cost. It fosters guilt, self-denial, and a repression of natural instincts, leading to psychological conflict and existential dissatisfaction. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow aligns with Nietzsche's insights. The shadow represents the parts of the self that are repressed due to societal or moral conditioning. For instance, individuals raised in rigid moral or religious environments may suppress traits like ambition, sexuality, or aggression, leading to inner conflict. These repressed aspects do not disappear, but instead manifest unconsciously through projections, irrational behaviors, and neuroses. Both Nietzsche and Jung emphasize that true self-awareness requires confronting these suppressed elements, rather than allowing them to dominate from the shadows. Nietzsche's declaration that God is dead symbolizes the collapse of absolute moral values, forcing individuals to create their own ethical frameworks. This mirrors Jung's process of individuation, where integrating the shadow into conscious awareness is essential for psychological wholeness. Without this integration, individuals remain fragmented, projecting their disowned traits onto others and perpetuating cycles of hostility and moral hypocrisy. Both thinkers advocate for personal responsibility and self-discovery, rejecting external moral impositions in favor of authentic self-definition. Moreover, Nietzsche and Jung recognize that societal moral structures often foster guilt and self-denial, stifling human potential. Nietzsche's concept of self-overcoming, rejecting imposed limitations, and defining one's own values parallels Jung's call for conscious engagement with the shadow. True ethical responsibility, they argue, arises not from blind obedience to external norms, but from deep self-awareness and the integration of all aspects of the psyche. At the collective level, Nietzsche and Jung's ideas reveal how moral frameworks shape cultural dynamics. Societal moral structures often develop in ways that reinforce slave morality, rewarding obedience, conformity, and self-sacrifice over strength, authenticity, and creative will. Institutions, whether religious, educational, or political, tend to perpetuate these moral constructs, conditioning individuals to suppress their instincts. Over time, this breeds a culture of fear, shame, and resentment, stifling human potential. This phenomenon is evident in historical shifts, where dominant ideologies have suppressed alternative perspectives, leading to stagnation and eventual upheaval. In contemporary society, Nietzsche and Jung's insights remain highly relevant. The rapid evolution of cultural norms and ethical debates often leaves individuals in moral uncertainty, searching for authentic self-definition. Nietzsche's critique of morality and Jung's psychology provide tools for navigating this uncertainty by emphasizing inner exploration over external validation. The growing presence of ideological dogmatism in political and social discourse further underscores the need for a deeper understanding of how morality can be weaponized as a tool of control and division. Recognizing this pattern allows individuals to break free from imposed moral limitations and construct values that align with their unique aspirations and psychological makeup. Furthermore, Technological and cultural shifts introduce new dimensions to moral conditioning. Social media platforms, for example, reinforce performative morality where individuals feel pressured to conform to collective moral sentiments rather than engage in authentic ethical self-exploration. The fear of social ostracization discourages genuine self-expression, mirroring Nietzsche's concerns about herd mentality and Jung's warnings regarding the shadow's projection onto others. This external moral policing fosters an environment where self-deception thrives, as people suppress their true thoughts and desires in favor of societal approval. By acknowledging these complexities, Nietzsche and Jung's ideas offer a path forward, one that prioritizes self-awareness, individual agency, and the courage to engage with one's inner conflicts. Moral development, according to their frameworks, is not about rigid adherence to imposed doctrines, but about fostering an honest, dynamic engagement with one's instincts, strengths, and limitations. In doing so, individuals cultivate an ethical approach rooted in authenticity rather than repression, ultimately leading to a more meaningful and autonomous existence. Point 2. The Übermensch and individuation paths to self-transformation. Nietzsche's Übermensch represents the ideal of self-creation in an individual who transcends societal limitations and embraces their own values. This concept is often misunderstood as a call for domination over others, but in reality, it is about mastering oneself. The Übermensch embodies the highest form of human potential, one who has moved beyond resentment and external validation to forge a unique, authentic existence. The Übermensch is not a fixed ideal, but a dynamic process of becoming. Nietzsche describes this process as self-overcoming, a continual striving to transcend one's limitations and create new values. This requires confronting the darker aspects of the self, including repressed instincts and desires, and integrating them into a cohesive whole. In this sense, the Übermensch is not a figure of perfection, but one of authenticity and creative power. Jung's process of individuation mirrors this ideal. Individuation involves integrating the unconscious elements of the psyche, including the shadow, to achieve psychological wholeness. Like the Übermensch, the individuated self rejects conformity and external validation, instead embracing a path of self-discovery and personal transformation. Both Nietzsche and Jung warn against the dangers of passive existence. Nietzsche's last man represents the conformist who prioritizes comfort over greatness, while Jung's individuation failure leads to psychological stagnation and existential dissatisfaction. The Übermensch and the individuated self both exemplify the courage to confront the darker aspects of the psyche. Nietzsche's will to power a drive towards self-actualization and creative expression finds its psychological counterpart in Jung's emphasis on integrating the shadow. This process is not about eradicating darkness, but about transforming it into a source of strength and creativity. By embracing their repressed instincts and desires, individuals can move beyond fragmentation and achieve a more authentic, empowered existence. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch also challenges the notion of fixed identities. He argues that traditional moral frameworks impose rigid categories of good and evil, limiting human potential. The Übermensch, by contrast, embraces fluidity and self-creation, rejecting external definitions of worth in favor of personal authenticity. This aligns with Jung's idea that individuation involves transcending the personality mask we wear to conform to societal expectations and embracing the true self. Both thinkers emphasize the importance of struggle in the process of self-transformation. Nietzsche's Übermensch thrives on challenges, viewing obstacles as opportunities for growth. Similarly, Jung's individuation process often involves confronting painful truths and integrating difficult aspects of the psyche. This struggle is not a sign of failure, but a necessary step towards psychological wholeness and existential freedom. In contemporary society, the ideals of the Übermensch and individuation offer a powerful antidote to the alienation and fragmentation of modern life. Many individuals feel trapped by societal expectations, struggling to reconcile their authentic selves with external pressures. Nietzsche and Jung's frameworks provide a roadmap for breaking free from these constraints, encouraging individuals to embrace their unique potential and create their own values. The Übermensch and the individuated self also challenge the notion of moral absolutism. Both Nietzsche and Jung reject the idea that morality can be reduced to a set of universal rules. Instead, they advocate for a more nuanced, individualized approach to ethics, rooted in self-awareness and personal responsibility. This perspective is particularly relevant in a world where moral debates often devolve into polarized conflicts, with little room for dialogue or understanding. Ultimately, the Übermensch and individuation represent a call to embrace the full complexity of human existence. By confronting the darker aspects of the self and transcending imposed moral structures, individuals can achieve a deeper sense of meaning and purpose. This process is not easy, but it is essential for psychological and existential liberation. In a world marked by conformity and repression, Nietzsche and Jung's ideals offer a path toward greater authenticity, creativity, and freedom. Point 3. The cultural shadow-modern implications of Nietzsche and Jung. In contemporary society, the suppression of the shadow manifests in political extremism, ideological conflicts, and moral absolutism. Nietzsche's concept of resentment, the deep-seated resentment of those who feel powerless, remains strikingly relevant. Modern social movements, political rhetoric, and online discourse often reveal this phenomenon, as individuals project their frustrations onto perceived oppressors, creating cycles of blame and division. Jung's shadow theory explains this dynamic as a defense mechanism. When individuals fail to confront their own repressed fears and insecurities, they externalize these qualities onto others, fostering hostility and scapegoating. This is evident in ideological Puritanism, where opposing viewpoints are demonized rather than engaged with. Both the political left and right exhibit this tendency, using moral righteousness as a justification for intolerance. Nietzsche warns that such moral fanaticism is a symptom of repressed instincts, while Jung argues that collective psychoses characterized by hysteria, scapegoating, and mass delusions arise when societies fail to integrate their shadows. The cultural shadow is also visible in herd mentality, where individuals suppress their authentic selves in favor of social acceptance. Nietzsche's Last Man and Jung's warnings about conformity highlight the dangers of prioritizing comfort and validation over self-awareness and growth. In the digital age, social media reinforces performative morality, discouraging genuine self-expression and fostering self-deception. This repression leads to existential dissatisfaction and neurosis as individuals lose touch with their true desires and potential. At the societal level, the failure to integrate the shadow can manifest in authoritarianism and ideological warfare. Historically, oppressive regimes have justified their actions by projecting their shadow onto external enemies, whether political opponents, ethnic minorities, or ideological dissenters. Nietzsche's critique of slave morality warns that cultures dominated by resentment seek to destroy rather than create, while Jung shows how entire societies can become possessed by their unconscious fears, leading to cycles of repression and retaliation. To transcend these destructive cycles, both Nietzsche and Jung advocate for radical self-awareness and personal responsibility. Nietzsche's Übermensch is an individual who has moved beyond resentment, taking full ownership of their existence. Jung's individuated self has confronted and integrated the shadow, achieving psychological wholeness. The path to overcoming cultural divisions lies not in moral puritanism or ideological warfare, but in personal transformation. By embracing the lessons of Nietzsche and Jung, individuals and societies can foster resilience, creativity, and a deeper sense of meaning. The true challenge of our era is not the avoidance of darkness, but the ability to integrate it constructively. This requires courage, self-reflection, and a willingness to engage with the complexities of the human psyche. In doing so, we can forge new pathways for human potential and cultural evolution, moving beyond reactionary tribalism toward genuine understanding and growth. Point 4. Toward integration and transformation, a path beyond repression and division. The philosophies of Nietzsche and Jung converge on a central theme: the necessity of confronting and integrating the darker aspects of the self to achieve psychological and existential liberation. In a world increasingly marked by ideological polarization, moral absolutism, and cultural fragmentation, their insights offer a roadmap for personal and collective transformation. This section explores how Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch and Jung's process of individuation can guide individuals and societies toward integration, resilience, and creative renewal. The crisis of modernity, repression and projection. Modern society is characterized by a profound crisis of meaning and identity. The rapid pace of technological advancement, the erosion of traditional moral frameworks, and the rise of ideological tribalism have left many individuals feeling alienated and fragmented. Nietzsche's diagnosis of nihilism, loss of meaning and purpose, remains strikingly relevant. In the absence of absolute values, individuals often turn to external sources of validation, such as social media, political ideologies, or consumer culture, to fill the void. However, These external solutions often exacerbate the problem, fostering a culture of performative morality and superficiality. Jung's concept of the shadow provides a psychological lens through which to understand this crisis. The shadow represents the repressed aspects of the psyche traits, desires, and instincts that are deemed unacceptable by societal or moral standards. When individuals fail to confront their shadows, these repressed elements manifest unconsciously through projection, scapegoating, and irrational behavior. This dynamic is evident in contemporary political and social discourse, where individuals and groups externalize their fears and insecurities onto perceived enemies, creating cycles of blame and division. For example, the rise of populist movements and ideological extremism can be understood as a collective projection of the shadow. Groups that feel marginalized or disenfranchised often direct their resentment toward perceived oppressors, whether they are political elites, immigrants, or cultural minorities. This externalization of the shadow fosters a culture of hostility and division, preventing meaningful dialogue and collective progress. Nietzsche's concept of resentment, the deep-seated resentment of those who feel powerless, provides a framework for understanding this phenomenon. When individuals and groups are unable to assert their power constructively, they resort to destructive forms of expression, such as moral outrage, ideological fanaticism, and scapegoating. The path to integration. Confronting the shadow. To transcend these destructive cycles, both Nietzsche and Jung advocate for radical self-awareness and personal responsibility. Nietzsche's Übermensch represents the individual who has moved beyond resentment and external validation, embracing their own values and creative potential. This process of self-overcoming requires confronting the darker aspects of the self, including repressed instincts and desires, and integrating them into a cohesive whole. Similarly, Jung's process of individuation involves integrating the shadow into conscious awareness, achieving psychological wholeness and existential freedom. The first step in this process is self-reflection. Individuals must be willing to examine their own fears, insecurities, and biases, rather than projecting them onto others. This requires courage and honesty, as it involves confronting aspects of the self that may be uncomfortable or painful. For example, an individual who feels a deep sense of inadequacy may project this insecurity onto others, criticizing their achievements or dismissing their worth. By recognizing this projection and taking responsibility for their own feelings, the individual can begin to integrate their shadow and achieve greater self-awareness. Jung emphasizes that the shadow is not inherently evil but represents the untapped potential of the psyche. Traits such as aggression, ambition, and sexuality, which are often repressed due to societal or moral conditioning, can be sources of strength and creativity when integrated consciously. For instance, an individual who has suppressed their ambition due to fear of failure or social disapproval may experience a sense of stagnation and frustration. By embracing their ambition and channeling it constructively, they can achieve greater fulfillment and success. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power a drive towards self-actualization and creative expression aligns with this idea. The will to power is not about domination over others, but about mastering oneself and realizing one's potential. This requires confronting and transcending the limitations imposed by societal norms and moral frameworks. For example, an artist who has internalized societal expectations of conformity may suppress their creative instincts, producing work that is safe but uninspired. By embracing their unique vision and rejecting external validation, the artist can tap into their creative power and produce work that is authentic and transformative. The role of struggle and transformation. Both Nietzsche and Jung emphasize the importance of struggle in the process of self-transformation. Nietzsche's Übermensch thrives on challenges, viewing obstacles as opportunities for growth. Similarly, Jung's individuation process often involves confronting painful truths and integrating difficult aspects of the psyche. This struggle is not a sign of failure, but a necessary step towards psychological wholeness and existential freedom. For example, an individual who has experienced trauma may suppress their pain and vulnerability, creating a facade of strength and resilience. However, this repression often leads to psychological